Hi, welcome back. In previous lessons, I've already compared a couple of features from Magento 2 into Shopware, which is useful maybe if you're a Magento developer looking into diving into Shopware. This specific lesson is all about events subscriber, events observers, and etc. And how do the events of Magento compare to the events of Shopware? Well, first off, let's actually cover how Magento is dealing with events. So hopefully this is something that you're familiar with, because, well, then this lesson is actually for you. As soon as you dive into Magento 2 events, the first step into observing a specific event is just to add a little file called events.xml. Theoretically, that file could be located into multiple subfolders, so-called application areas. And then when there's a specific event, in this case, controller action post dispatch, I can just add an observer tag to it, referring to a specific unique name, referring to my specific instance, and the method is actually omitted in this case. The method is therefore automatically the execute method. This is pointing then towards a specific class. And within that class, I have the chance to actually listen to that event itself. So you can see that the configuration between what kind of event is out there, and then what kind of observer could listen to that specific event is directly there in the XML part. The PHP part on its own is just nothing more than a class implementing a certain observer interface, and then through that interface, the execute method is required or made required, allowing also for this input argument of an observer, and that's basically how the whole thing comes to being. And it's a little bit beyond the point, but obviously within that class you can just play around with dependency injection, bring in new dependencies, bring in more functionality to do your thing. Putting together an observer in Magento, in short, is first of all a little bit of XML to bind the specific event to your specific class, and then within your class you can do the thing that you needed to do. Let's compare this to Shopware. In Shopware, kind of like the same thing is there, but of course, well, the whole strategy is different, the terminology is different, but I think like the steps, first creating some XML and then a little bit of PHP, are quite similar. Specifically here, we're expanding upon the services.xml, the service definition, which is also the place where you just come up with your own service definitions when it deals with coming up with a command line or injecting dependencies as arguments in your constructor. And in this specific case, I'm just coming up with a class called example listener, tagging it in a certain way as a kernel.eventListener, documenting also the event name, and then the method that is going to be called upon, and then actually the whole thing is being put together. So theoretically, looking back at the PHP class in Magento, where the method was always execute, I can also just override that method to be execute here as well. However, the nice thing about this method being on kernel exception is that within Shopware, if the event is actually kernel.exception, all lowercase, I can convert it into a camel case on kernel exception and then omitting the method argument right here. So if the method argument is actually not there, then automatically Shopware or Symfony actually turns this event name into the method to be expected within the class itself. Well, the class itself doesn't need to implement a certain interface, so that's a little bit of a variation, but it does need to come up with that on kernel exception class, and then actually the exception or in this case it's an exception event, but the event itself is not just a package like in Magento based upon a data object, very generic, but actually the event itself is a specific class shipping with specific constructor arguments, specific getters to get those same arguments out of that class again, and that's kind of like one little difference between the event mechanism in Magento and the event mechanism in Shopware. Now there's a little bit more to it than just the example that I've shown you here, but by intention this was just a short summary showing that Shopware has events. There's plenty of events in the whole system, just like with Magento, and likewise to get going with such an event, first you simply just have a little bit of XML, and then you construct your PHP class, and then basically you lead into dependency injection, injecting dependencies, additional features, just to do your thing, just like within Magento. In Shopware, the thing becomes a little bit more complex as soon as we not only talk about the event listeners, the thing that I was just mentioning earlier, but also event subscribers. And in short, an event listener is always bound to a specific event through that XML configuration that we just saw, while an event subscriber is a more generic class where actually the class itself, not the XML definition, but the PHP code is defining what kind of events this event subscriber is listened to. Other than that, I think the main points are known to you. There's events scattered all around the system. So one of the things that is always kind of like more challenging is to get the hang of what kind of events are out there. But therefore, I'm also focusing upon events in upcoming lessons much more. This lesson was just to have a little bit of a comparison to show you that, well, there's events in Magento, there's events in Shopware, and the only thing that you need to do is to come up with a little bit of XML and a little bit of PHP to get yourself started. So that's it for this little lesson, but stay tuned for more comparisons between Magento and Shopware, and hopefully I'm putting it in such a way that you're beginning to like Shopware yourself as I do. So see you in a bit.